Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. This is Saturday morning with Dr. Mama Rosie Thompson. Today is June 1st, 2024, and we are getting ready to start on our continue talking about becoming your whole authentic self. Today we're going to talk some about our emotions, our feelings, and our moods. Not a lot, but I'm going to share what I have with you today. So once again, as always, thank you so much for joining. I really, really appreciate you. Thank you for coming on and for taking the time out of your day. I'm coming to you today from StreamYard because I do want to show you a slide today that I haven't done it in the past, and I've been practicing. I hope that it works correctly. But I'm going to show you a slide today, one slide that I need to talk to you about. But anyway, so today we are going to continue to talking about becoming our whole authentic self. Last week we talked some about self-worth, and we talked about secondary. Well, no, we didn't talk about self-worth. That was the week before. We talked about secondary trauma, and you know that secondary trauma is the type of trauma caused by indirect experiences of a traumatic event. So anyone in a position to hear of a recounting of a traumatic experience is at risk of secondary trauma. Just because you hear it, and depending on how it affects you, once you hear it, that you're at risk for secondary trauma. So we want to make sure that when we talk about it, want to make sure that we understand this, because I think it's really important that we talk about it and we understand, especially when we're recounting experiences of the death of a child or a helpless person that can have us experiencing trauma. We also talked about self-regulation. It's the ability to monitor and to manage our energy states. We want to manage our emotions. We want to pay attention to our thoughts, what we're thinking, and how we're allowing ourselves to continue to think about something, how it's affecting us, our behavior in ways that are acceptable. So we want to manage our ways, so we have display ways that are acceptable to ourselves and acceptable to other people. Because the goal is to produce positive results, such as well-being and loving relationships. We want loving relationships. In order to do that, we need to make sure that we're working to self-regulate. Self-regulation is essential, especially in trauma. For virtually all trauma survivors deal with ongoing emotional reactions to things that remind them of the past. We talked about those trauma triggers, things that remind us of the past, and secondary alerts. That can be anything that reminds us. It can be a secondary alert or it can be a trigger. And with the increased vulnerability to stress that usually follows trauma. So it's essential that we practice self-regulation when we're dealing with things, especially after trauma. As you know, trauma disrupts our balance, balance in our lives. And in order to take full control or to become our whole authentic self, we have to self-regulate, to be the person that we want to be, to live the life we want to live, and to have others in our lives. We want to make sure that we're practicing self-regulation. So when we talk about self-regulation, it's the ability to monitor and manage our energy states, as I said before, and behavior. It's really important that we do that. Okay. In order to have a well-rounded balance, we need to understand the areas in our lives that affect that wholeness and that balance as our emotions. So we need to understand all aspects of our lives so that it helps us to have the life that we want. If we can't fix anything that we don't understand, and we don't want to go about starting to try and fix things in our lives that's affecting us, that truly, if we don't understand those things, we don't want to start trying to fix things. The better we are at understanding our emotions and our feelings, the better we are at expressing them. That's also important. Sometimes, I'll give you an example. I was at work one day and I was talking to a manager. She was sharing to me, and she was talking to me, but she shared some information about another manager. And she said that a manager had come into her office and was talking. Well, an employee had complained about this manager, and she was telling the second level manager some things that the first level manager said to her. And when the secondary level manager called the first level manager in to talk to them about what she had said to her employee, the manager was saying, I didn't say that, but that's not what I said. And she said, well, that's what they heard. So when we are not able to express ourselves, it's really important that we understand our feelings, we understand our emotions, and we want to be able to express those feelings and emotions to other people. Sometimes we're thinking that person is just ignoring what we're saying when they don't really even know what we're saying. because they're hearing it from what they think, and it based a lot of times on the things that they know in their life, their experiences. So they're hearing one thing, and you're trying to say something different. And I think that's big. I probably should have gone more on that one today, but sometimes we're trying to get people to see things one way, and we're saying things and they don't, and it's just like, you don't get it, you're not listening. It's not that always. Sometimes it's that the way we express ourselves, people are not understanding what we mean when we say something. One thing we talked about in the past was, if you tell your friend, I want you to spend more time with me, and they're thinking, well, that's all I do. I mean, I come home from work every day, I don't go out, I'm spending time with you. But maybe that's not what you mean. Maybe what you mean is, we should go out more, we should have a date night. But you need to be able to express that in detail so that the other person understands what you're saying and what you're talking about. Our emotions have a strong influence on our daily lives. We make our decisions based on whether we are happy, whether we're angry, sad, bored, frustrated. We make decisions like that. Because sometimes I can be bored, and I'll go to the grocery store and buy some stuff that I shouldn't have bought, but it can affect us. And the decisions that we make, whether we get up because and go do something because we're bored, or because if we get in the bed because we're bored, if we eat because we're bored, if we eat because we're frustrated, all of those things, our emotions are going to have an influence, a strong influence on how we live our daily lives. We also choose our activities and hobbies based on the emotions that we incite. Understanding our emotions can help us to navigate life with greater ease and stability. And that's where we're going. That's what we're hoping for. We're able to manage life stresses better when we are aware of our internal emotional state, and when we are mindful and present with how our mind and body respond to life stresses. So when we are mindful of how our life, how our body, and how our mind respond to stresses, we then can work to regulate those things, and we can then work to manage those stresses better. We can't manage them if we don't really understand. Sometimes, like eating, having a habit of eating when we're bored. If we don't understand that boredom is causing me to eat, then we don't know how to manage that. But we want to be aware of our lives in every aspect of our life. We can then have it to do, if we manage our life stresses, we can then have improved emotional regulations, as well as emotional resilience and a lower level of anxiety. So I wanted to talk a little bit today. Sometimes we use the term feelings, emotions, and moods interchangeably, but those are actually they actually mean something different. And the more we understand what they mean and how they respond in our lives, it helps us to make the decisions that we need to make. Better make decisions. Emotions are reactions or stimulus or triggers, such as irritants, sight, smells. They are sensations. Emotions are sensations in our lives. These which originate as our emotions, which originate as sensations in our lives, are these intense feelings, exhilaration, terror, despair, but they only last a second. So your emotion itself only lasts seconds to a minute. It doesn't last longer than that. And they are basically our body's response to whatever's happening around us. So our emotions are based on whatever happened around us. We want to think about it like that, because they don't let they're not you're not having an emotional reaction more than a minute. Feelings are what we experience as a result of the emotion. So sometimes when we have these emotions, they produce these feelings. These feelings, well, not sometimes, but all the time, feelings are what we experience as a result of our emotions. Feelings are influenced by our emotions, but are generated from our mental thinking, from our mental thoughts. While emotions start with a sensation in our body, feelings are generated from our thoughts about those emotions. So I get this emotion. How do you feel about it? That's where your feelings will come from. There's a tool that I want to show you, and bear with me today because I've never shared anything on this site. But there's a tool called the emotional wheel, and this wheel helps us to identify and better understand the emotions that we're experiencing. Understanding them is a vital step inside. Understanding anything is a vital step in solving any problem that we have or any dilemma. The first thing we need to do is to understand it. Once we understand the emotion that arises from us in certain situations, such as when we feel triggered, then we can take steps to ease those emotions. We want to have a well-rounded understanding of ourselves to help us to manage the life that we want. Feelings are influenced by our perception of the situation. which is why the same emotion can trigger different feelings in different people. As we get to the emotional wheel, we'll see that you can have an emotion, and it can trigger one feeling in you and a different feeling in somebody else. And I think that's some of the things that's going to help us to even understand it. Let me bring it up, and just give me one moment to bring it up. Okay, let me present it and share my screen. Give me a second to share my screen. And I'm going to share. Well, I thought I had it up, and I apologize for that. Let me bring it up because I do want to share it. Now, I don't know if I'm sharing it yet, so I apologize. Like I said, I have to go back to. No, I'm not. So let me share it and share. So hopefully you can see this. It says that I'm sharing it. Okay, this is the emotional wheel. In this wheel, we use this emotional wheel. This is the way we use it. We first start to think about an experience in which you felt triggered. You know, anything that happened in your life, how did it make you feel? What emotion did it evoke? Did it make you sad? Did it make you angry or mad? Did it scare you, make you afraid? Did it make you joyful, powerful? Because all of our emotions, all of the experiences that we're talking about, we want to regulate all of them. Don't want to be overly anything. So when we start to talk about this, know that we're not just talking about the horrible things in our life, but we're also talking about, we don't want to be over the top in any situation. We want to be balanced in any situation in our life. So when we look at this, the first you see in the very middle where it says mad, sad, powerful, peaceful, joyful, scared. And I encourage you to look these up on YouTube or Facebook. Google these to look at these wheels. So you first think about an experience in which you felt triggered. You start by looking at the middle of the wheel to identify the core emotions you felt during that experience. Think about something, how you felt during that experience. If you were angry, if you were sad, if you were numb, then what do you experience physically? You also start to think about that. So it's really important that we stop, slow down, take time, and look at these things when we're managing things in our life. So you want to first look at, how did you feel? What emotion was triggered? And then you want to know, how did you respond? Was it physically? Did your hands start to tremble? Did you feel it weight in the pit of your stomach? Once you do that, once we identify that, think about the emotion. Look at the emotion that we felt when this thing happened to us. Every time I go to work and this person does something to me, whatever they're doing, how does it make me feel? What emotion does it make me angry? Does it makes me just frustrated? What does it do? Then from there, we want to move to the outer parts of the wheel. Now, don't go all the way out here yet. Go to that middle around circle in the middle. So when we look at this, we go to the outer parts. We look for the feelings that's associated with that emotion. Don't necessarily look for the emotion now. Just look at the feelings. Don't pay. You've already done this part. Skip now. Forget about it. Don't forget about it. But put it on the back burner and go into the second part. These are your feelings. Now, rather than take note of which one resonates with you, but we don't want to take we want to take note of which one resonated with us, which one of these feelings resonate with us. And remember that you're not trying to fix anything. You're not even trying to change your emotion. You're just trying to become aware. When we look and we see now, just at the emotions, and you think about that same thing that happened, how did it make you feel now? Was it now we go from the emotion to the feeling? Did it make you feel insecure? Did it make you feel hateful, angry, hostile? Did it make you feel hurt? Now you want to leave these two sections and go to the very outer. This is the more detailed explanation of our feelings. This the outer wheel is. The outer part of this wheel is the most detailed. And it's a good idea to repeat this process several times as you think about the various experiences that trigger a symptom connected to something that happened to you, most especially when we talk about our past, abuse in our past. As you do so, look for the patterns. Are there specific emotions you feel when you experience a specific situation or you interact with a specific person? See if you can find anything if there are any parent patterns. Because coping with these feelings of these aggressions can require different tactics when than coping with the feeling of insecurity. So we all depend on which one you have. That the way you're going to cope with it is going to be different. So as I said, we're going to start with the middle one. This one we're gonna look for our feelings. Then we're going to go out here because these are even more detailed feelings. So now think about this: if you have a situation and and the emotion that you have, they make you mad. Somebody that makes you mad. Now, the feeling you have, do you get angry about it? Do you get hateful? Do you feel hurt? How does it feel? Then you go out and say, why do you feel mad? Does it make me feel like I'm inadequate? See, now we're going out to a different emotion. Does it make me feel inadequate? Does it make me feel insignificant? Does it make me feel discouraged rather? So these are different feelings. But when you're saying to them that I'm afraid, they may think that they don't take it as you're feeling discouraged or that you're feeling inadequate or that you're feeling bewildered. So we need to make sure that when we're expressing our emotions, that we do it in a way where the other person understands. It's so important to have conversations that detailed conversation. That's why we say that we don't want to just say something and think that other person know what we're talking about. So when you look at this wheel and you just practice for yourself, think about your emotion, think about your feelings, go into deeper levels of your feelings, and don't look to say, okay, if I'm feeling powerful, then I have to feel, if I have to feel these ways. No, you don't. I can feel powerful. When I feel powerful, am I actually feeling, stimulated? Am I actually feeling daring? Am I actually feeling playful? Look for the feelings and then go back and to get a detail to help you understand your own emotion and to be able to, and it helps you to be able to share that emotion with somebody else. It's going to be really important that we're able to share that, what we're trying to say, with somebody else. Okay. Now, go back because I want to go back to what I was sharing with you. Okay. Now, when we use this emotional wheel, another thing it does, it helps us to understand our needs. When we know this is I got this emotion, this is how it makes me feel. Now I understand when I feel a certain way. What do I need to remedy that? What do I need? Because when you have, there's always a need response to your emotions or your feelings. There's a need response as well. Not only can we experience emotion at any given minute, but we also experience these needs in response to these. Every emotion has a need, and every response and a response to that emotion. We call these responses, we call them emotional needs. So for an example, if we are experiencing a feeling of rejection, then our emotional need may be acceptance, or maybe need to feel belonging. So the need is, how do we get to be accepted? How do we feel that? How do we change that feeling from rejection to belonging? Emotional needs are also part of our normal. It's part of the normal human experience. One thing that I shared. One of the reasons I like sharing this information is because we go through things, and just because yours doesn't look like mine, it doesn't mean that we're not both going through things. Sometimes we get into a place where we feel like we're the only one. I don't know if it's because of people, the other feedback that we get from people, but we already know that people don't always tell the detail. People don't always tell. Sometimes people can't, just share the way we do. But it's a normal, emotional needs are a part of the normal human experience. Know that. We seek out emotional nourishment. That's what we do as human beings. The same as we seek out nourishment for our food and our water. The complexity, though, of how we get these needs met may change, but we still seek them out, especially as we get older. But the root stays the same. We still have these emotional needs. We still have needs in our life. Just because we get older, that doesn't mean that we don't have needs anymore. Like I say, the root, the complexity and may change the way that we need the things that we feel like but the root is still the same. It's still an emotional need. We want to be mindful not to allow those needs to turn into emotional dependence. Now that's a bigger thing. We don't want to be dependent on anybody to fulfill our emotional needs or our needs. And anyway, good morning, Sister Delphi. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much. Appreciate you coming on. But we want to make sure that we don't depend on anybody else to fulfill us in those ways. We want relationships. I'm going to stop here because I wanted to say something. We want relationships that are balanced. We're looking to be whole and authentic. That was I went to when we had our women prayer at the church. One of the young ladies were talking about the first young lady one was a little bit older, I think, and then young lady two, and I think they were. So I'm going to say that. So young lady one was talking about praying for her husband. She's engaged, so she was talking about being specific in your prayers and how you have to tell God exactly what you want, and that's true. You do need to know exactly what you want when you're praying. But the young lady number two, who looked to be a little bit younger, said to young lady number one, to all of us rather, she said, "Yeah, I think that's a good idea." She said, "But," and I'm paraphrasing, she said, "when you have this list of what you want, make another column that says what you bring, that correlates with what you want." So, and I'm not talking about material things are still important. You may say, "Well, he has to have a car." Well, what do you have? I expect him to have a bank account. What do you have? A bank account. I expect him to have this. You need to say these things and if you want a certain amount him to have, then look at your account and see, do you have that? I want him to be physically fit. Then are you physically fit? You want to make sure that what you're asking for is not unfair in a relationship. And even in a friendship, what you're asking for should not be more than what you're willing to give. And as we said in the wheel back then a moment ago, we got to remember too. When you are giving somebody, when you're talking about what you bring, you can't bring me what you want. You bring me what I want. It's important that we always we always say the things that I treat people the way I want to be treated. It may be better to think about treating them the way they want to be treated. I was talking to a friend of mine, and one thing that they buy these little, we used to call them knickknacks down south. They buy these little tinklers, these little things, and little, I call them little stuff you got to dust and clean. They're little decorative things. People like those little things. I don't care for those things. I don't like all those things. Buy me anything, let it be a candle, and don't buy me a lot of those. I've gotten older too. I don't like a lot of stuff. So if you treat me the way I want, you won't buy me stuff that I don't want to use, things that I don't do anything with. Don't buy me a lot of stuff. That's not what I need. Maybe that's what you like. Maybe and we need to also look at, when we think about these things, why is it that this is what I want? I try and look at every aspect of my life. Yeah, thank you. Trinkets. Thank you, whatnot. But I try to look at every aspect of my life and see, why am I doing this? Why do I want this? Some things I found out, and I shared it a while back, but I found out because as a kid, we didn't have a lot of food. So because we didn't have food, sometimes I would be hungry as a kid. So when I became an adult, I started buying stuff. I used to stock up like crazy. And then I ended up with things that were expiring, grocery that was expiring. But I was also mindful because I wanted to be a good steward over my finances. So, and I was praying for God to bless my finances, and He was blessing my finances, and I was throwing it in the garbage. So there's a lot to think about. I wanted to talk about finances today, but I knew I had to do this first. And I want to talk, not to talk about finances in the sense that we throw away our finances, but I also want, because that's important too, I want to talk to you about how we can, some tips on managing your finances. I came from I told you, shared on here, that I came from living off of $250 a month public aid. And it was a lot, because when I was on public aid, I paid every bill. It was a struggle, but I made sure the kids ate, and we got the things that we had to have. And then when I got a job that was making more money than I ever made, even ever probably seen, I didn't know how to pay my bills. I got behind and things. I didn't know what to do. I started making decisions that that worked against me instead of for me. So I really want to talk about finance. I have some tips, because I came from living in a car with 4 children. I came from being homeless, from living in a car with my kids, and to where I am today. Where I am today, to be able to go and buy my condo cash. So I thank God for where I am. But it's not because it's because of the way that I manage my stuff, and I pay attention to what God give me. I'm always paying attention to what God give me, and I pay attention to what I do with it. So I want to talk about finances, but let me go through this one, and maybe that'll be next. Maybe that'll be next week where we start to talk about finances. So we also, when we talk about emotions, we talk about our feelings, and then we talk about mood. So I'm in this mood. A mood is just a general feeling. It's not a reaction to any particular situation. It's actually a mixed feeling of your emotions and your feelings. They're an internal state of feeling that is less intense and it lasts, and lasts longer than emotion. So your emotions, like I say, will probably be over in 1 minute. Your feelings about that emotion may not subside that easily, and your mood may last a little longer than your emotion. So a mood is a state of mind or a general feeling that can influence our thoughts. So our mood influences our thoughts, our behavior, and our action, just like our feelings do, and just like our emotions do. They tend to be less intense than emotion and do not necessarily depend on any type of event or trigger. We just get in the mood. It doesn't have to be anything that we don't even. Sometimes we get in these moods and we don't even know where they come from. Rather than being how you feel in the moment, your mood is like how you feel over time. Sometimes you get tired of things that have been going on for a while, and it push you in, and you get into this mood. They're influenced by the environment, your diet, your exercise, physical health. What you choose to think about can affect our mood. That's why we're mindful what we allow. You remember what we think is gonna affect how we feel. How we feel is gonna affect how we act. That's why we talk about a lot of time the stuff. If it's too much negativity coming at you, to make sure that you choose to change that. Okay, and they can last for minutes, days. Your mood can last for even for days, and they have no unique, nonverbal facial expression. You're just in the mood. You don't look like it's just having this mood. Yeah, our emotions, our feelings, and our moods all work together to impact how we perceive and live in the world around us. When we are in a bad mood, we tend to experience sadness, anger, and fear, or fear. And when we're in a good mood, we tend to be happy and hopeful. If we are sad, angry, sometimes we can be angry, sometimes we can be afraid. And then we may then feel worthless and like our life doesn't matter. So when we understand our emotion, we understand where these feelings are coming from, and then we can talk about how we can manage them. But it's important that we understand that this could be, if it's a mood, it could last for days, and where is it coming from? So we go backward then. I'm in this mood. Where is it coming from? It's lasting for days. And then I can go back to why am I feeling this way. And before we go and look at the center part of that emotional wheel, we start to think about, these are my feelings. Now, what emotion is it attached to? And when do I get this emotion? Is it when I think about this, or when this person says this to me? And why is it that every time I go to work, every time I go around this person and they say something to me, why does it affect me? We're looking for all of that. We're paying attention. We're monitoring. And that's what I'm going to go back to finance again before I say this. One important thing, in our finances is tracking. One important thing, and I'm going to say in our life, is being aware and tracking. Back in the day, they used to give us those checkbooks, and in the back of it, they had that little schedule or whatever that thing is, that you would put in what you spent and what was in your account, and you kind of managed it that way. So, but now tracking is really, really important. As I said, when I decided at one time in my life that I could not afford therapy, I got a journal and I started to write down, this is what's happening. This is when it's happening. What's happening around me when it's happening. This is if anybody else was involved in it, how I felt about it, what my life would be like if this wasn't happening. When we understand our feelings, our emotions, we try to slow down your reaction to your emotion. We want to slow down how we react to those emotions. I get this emotion. How do we react? Next time we feel angry, we want to sit with it before we lash out. Sometimes we have to sit. Sometimes we don't answer. Just because we don't answer doesn't mean that we're afraid of anybody. Doesn't mean that we don't know how to answer. Because we can come up with some answers we ourselves don't want to hear out loud. But we want to sit back and take our time. Sit with it before we lash out. Why am I angry? Did somebody upset you? What do you think of with the emotions underneath your behavior? So underneath that emotion, what happened? Sometimes we say things like we talked about. We say things like, every time I look around, that's because there's something in your past that's driving today's emotion. Man, they keep on doing. That's because something in your past is driving today's emotion. So we want to separate those things. If we don't want our life to get to a place where we're building up and building up and building up everything that has happened in the past affecting what's happening today, because it's not good for us, and it's going to hinder us, and hinder us from going where we want to go, hinder us from doing what we want to do, and it'll hinder us from having and living our whole authentic life. Think about your strength and weakness. No one is good at everything, and that's okay. Know yourself, know when to ask for help, and just as importantly, know when to offer help. We never want to get ourselves stressed out on trying to do things. We're to try to do things because we want to be good. No, we don't. We don't have to. We do things out of we sacrifice and do things because we want to. That if we do things because we want to, then when that other person doesn't come back and reciprocate, or when that other person doesn't come back and treat us that same way, it doesn't hurt us. We're hurt a lot of time because we're having these relationships by ourselves. We're having both sides of the relationship. Well, I do this, I'm expect them to do that. I did that and they didn't do that. We're managing in our mind both sides, and that's not fair because that other person is totally different. They may not even, like I said before, they may not even understand what we want because we didn't say it. We didn't say it in a way we didn't openly say what we needed. We want to put in the effort to understand what people are communicating non-verbally. So even when they talk to you, when you ask someone to help you with something and they agree but sound like they're hesitant, recognize that they may feel overwhelmed. Don't take everything personally to feel like, oh, they just don't want to help me. They could be overwhelmed, or they could be confused, or they come from a different background and understanding than your own. So if you say, I want you to do something, it makes no sense. That's common sense. It's coming to you. It may not be coming to that other person. We all grew up in different backgrounds. We grew up in different homes. So just because there was something in your home that you understood does not necessarily mean it's something I understood. I understand. You remember when we talked about emotional abuse, and sometimes people don't even know that they are being abusive. It's just that was their background. That's what their house was like. That they had always screamed at their mom. It wasn't a problem. I can't. It bothers me. It bothers me to hear other people arguing. They don't even have to be talking to me because I came up in that household where there was fighting, where there was arguing, and I can't take it. It triggers me every time. I can't. I remember one time we were looking out the window, and I lived on the north side, and the man and the woman was arguing, and I looked out the window, and he hit her, and I started to cry. I cried as hard as that lady. She was okay. She got up off the ground and walked away. And I was crying because this is where I grew up in. And these are the emotional triggers that affect me. So I don't know, just seeing it happen to somebody else really affected me because of my childhood. So we really need to understand this. When we understand this, we can work to make our lives what we want. It's important to validate and address before we move forward. Before we in any relationship, we want to put in the effort to understand what the other people communicate non-verbally. And if someone is showing that they're hesitant, or you recognize that they may be overwhelmed or confused, ask them. It's important to validate and address it before you move forward. The last thing you want is to ask somebody to do something or to communicate to somebody, and they're showing you non-verbally that they can't do it, and then you go on to do it and it's not done the way you want it done, then that affects the relationship. It's a lot that's going to come and affect the relationship, and this is one thing. Work on communicating effectively and openly. We don't mind sometimes communicating, but openly when we say openly, we open our mouth and we open our heart. It's easy sometimes for us to open our mouth, but we don't want to open our heart. When we're in a relationship and we really want to be in a relationship, we have to be willing to open our mouth and our heart. Make sure your point is clear. Your main point is clear. You want to make sure that your point is clear. Cut out information that isn't relevant to the person you're talking to, and give full attention when someone else is speaking. Those are huge. A lot of time when people come and try to communicate, they give you information that has nothing to do. It's not relevant to the person you're talking to. You need to be able to say, this is what I need. That's why we need to be able to understand our feeling. Minister Delphine said it also affects our self-esteem. Our self-esteem, we talked about our self-esteem. We talked about self-worth, how self-worth is a bigger form of self-esteem. we self-esteem, is based on outside influences can affect your self-esteem, but your self-worth cannot be influenced by outside factors because it comes from inside knowing who you are. So, but it can when you're dealing with self-esteem, this stuff can affect it. It affects your whole entire life in one way or another. I had a conversation with a friend, and I was talking about some things in my childhood and things that happened in my past, and they were saying that that never happened to them. Sometimes we don't understand. We don't understand that that the way something happened to you, it's the same thing that happened to me in a different form. Okay, let me see if I can explain this. What I'm trying to say. Let's say that okay, let's say that my brother was shot. My son got shot, and it affected me where I just didn't want to be around anybody. Now you're saying, well, that never happened to me. Okay, that didn't happen to you. Your son didn't get shot, but I don't want to be around anybody, and you cutting people out of your life. So you got to be mindful that it's not sometimes one sentence is the whole explanation of a thing. Pay attention to your entire life, your entire life, because we oftentimes want to talk about what we don't do anymore, but we don't want to talk about those things in our lives which are still affecting us. What you don't do anymore, you don't even have to talk about it no more. Praise God, you're done. That you don't do anymore. But look at those things that's still affecting your life. If you're not where you want to be, you don't go and do unwise things. I can tell, like I was talking to my girlfriend about, she wanted to know if it was trauma, the reason she has so many shoes. It could be. I don't know why you have so many shoes, and I can't tell anybody not to buy so many shoes. But what I can say, if you having problem paying your bill, and you got 100 pair of shoes, 200 pair of shoes, you may want to see why. Not that you shouldn't get them, but you may want to take a look at your life and say, well, why do I have all of these? Think about what it would be like if you hadn't bought all of those shoes. Maybe you would be able to pay your bill. Think about all your life. Don't just think about one aspect of your life. That's why when we talk about being our whole authentic self, we have to talk about all the aspects, everything that affects our life, everything in our life. So work on communicating effectively and openly. Find somebody that you can trust. Find that one person. You don't have to go out there and just tell everybody everything, but get that one person in your life who you know gonna hear you, and you can just tell them the truth about how you feel about them. Make sure your main point is clear. Talk to them. Make sure that your main point is clear. Cut out information that isn't relevant to that person you're talking with. Sometimes people get ready to tell you stuff, and they tell you how much the people weigh or what color their skin. What that has nothing to do with anything. Tell us what the problem is, what you're feeling, and then give your full attention. So that we're not that's really all we're going to talk about today. We want to make sure that we're mindful. Remember self-worth. Remember that our trauma can be direct or indirect. Self-regulation, monitoring our stress, monitoring our energy states, our thoughts, our emotion, behavior in ways that we find acceptable or we want to be acceptable. Really important. We know that trauma disrupts the balance, and we want to be our whole authentic self. So we start to regulate ourselves. Okay. We want to know, we understand that our emotions are just that little small circle of our emotion. Hey, Paulette, thank you for joining. We know that our emotion is a very, very small circle in our life. And I'm going to bring that screen back up again, and then we'll do our affirmation. But I'm going to bring it up one more time to show you one more time. Our emotions, when we talk again about our emotions, I'm going to share my screen. Share screen, and we're going to go to that window. I don't know why it don't want to come up. Every time I come, it doesn't want to come up. But let me bring it back up again. I don't know if I'm sharing it. Let me check and see. I'm not sharing it, but I will be in 2.2 seconds. I am sharing it right now. Remember that these are the emotions in the smaller circle. But all of this around are our feelings that are associated with our emotion. These are some of the feelings that can come from our emotions. Start by in the middle. Start to think about what emotion you're feeling. Am I angry? Does it make me sad? Does it make me afraid or scared? And then start to look at that feeling. So when we get ready to express ourselves, we can really express what we are feeling. Instead of using the emotions to express what we feeling, we want to express by using our feelings. And we want to tell them because that's the way we can get people to understand. And I think I said it before that manager said it's not sometimes what you say, it's what that other person heard. And when we're trying to have a relationship with people and we're trying to talk to them about what we need, it's important. What they hear is important. So it's important for them. It's about what they hear from us. Okay. We're gonna stop sharing that because we're gonna go back to our last slide today, which is our affirmations, and I'm gonna look and see if I have missed anybody that said anything that I want to acknowledge. I just want to thank all of you for coming on today. I really appreciate you. Hi Leslie, thank you so much. You know that this will be posted on YouTube. I always post my videos on YouTube. So good to see you, Miss Leslie. Thank you so much for coming on. And thank you everybody for joining. Thanks to all of those who will see these videos later in our YouTube. Really appreciate you. Really appreciate you taking the time to come on here with me when I come on Facebook. But it's also all my videos on YouTube. And we're going to continue to talk about being our whole authentic self. If something comes to heart, is something that you think we need to talk about, or something related to being our whole authentic self, we're still expecting Leslie, formerly Anderson. Her name is Leslie Rutledge, to come in and talk about being emotionally mature. We want to be mature in every aspect of our lives. We want to make the decisions that are best for us in everything that we do. Thank you, Sister Stephanie. Everything that we do, we want to make sure that we're rounded, that we're well rounded, we're happy. We deserve it. We earn it. We have a right to be happy. We have a right to live our life the way we want. We are unique individuals. Just because something works for Johnny doesn't mean it has to work for us. We have a right for our life to be whole and authentic the way we want. So our affirmations are of today. We honor ourselves by being authentic. We honor the power and the value that we have in ourselves. We are actually and exactly what and who we claim to be. We don't have to put on a face for anybody. We don't have to try to impress anybody. We are actually and exactly who and what we claim to be. We love and tranquility surrounds all of our interactions and our decisions. We are aware of our feelings. We're monitoring our feelings and we're understanding our emotions. We are emotionally whole. We walk in self-regulation. We regulate ourselves. We regulate our emotions. We regulate the time that we spend thinking about things that's not beneficial to us. We regulate ourselves because we are emotionally whole and we are safe places for ourselves. When no place and no one else is safe for us, we will be a safe place for ourselves. I really, really appreciate you coming on. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great day, and I will see you next Saturday at 8 a.m. Goodbye.